Ladies and gentlemen, here we are, episode 3, season 1 of Losing Our Marbles, a talk for two. That's right, I changed it. It's now a talk for two, not between two, because between two just seemed a little weird to say. Today, where do we even begin? COVID-19 destroyed it the first time. A meltdown of a computer destroyed it the second time. Almost lost it a third time due to a tilted tournament. But now, we're here. And so before anything has a chance to go wrong, I introduce Standard Damage.
Before the stream crashes. Oh man, how are you doing, everybody? How are you doing, Shens? It is wonderful to be back with you again. This time in your homestead.
Yes, round 2, as it were.
Oh my gosh, what a long road it has been. Getting here, like you know, and then yeah, the last one was supposed to happen. We were gonna do it, and then the tilted tournament was there. I'm like, is this ever? And I'm gonna say this for the benefit of everybody watching right now. Just before we went live, I told Shens, like, if there's ever been an indication of two people that were dedicated to make something happening, this was it. This was it, because every time we've tried to do this, something has come up. Today almost got goofed up, by the way, because I have a sponsored stream, but I was able to do that later in the night. So absolutely something else. So yeah, but good to be here. Very chill Saturday morning for me, just kind of relaxing, hanging with you, hanging with the community. And
it is one thing I forgot
to I'm already laughing.
That's one thing I forgot to say on your stream, was how nice it was just being on camera. Like, I didn't have to touch any chat buttons. I didn't have to open up any moderating settings. I didn't have to manage a stream. I didn't have to do overlays or transitions. I could just sit there and be on. It was so nice. So enjoy it.
Yeah, I was gonna.
Enjoy it.
It's nice. It's nice when I get to be in the passenger seat for a little while. I love being here with you, but yeah, it's nice to. I get to chill out just to touch. Yeah. I don't have to worry about the cameras or any of that. So yeah, yep.
Fantastic. Well, as it was last time we chatted on your podcast, we had gotten very much into the ideas of creation, what is revolution and what is plagiarism, essentially.
Yeah.
To quote the Frenchman. And a while back, I had written my interpretation of what it means to be someone who is capable of reaching into the undiscovered and bringing it in to the realm of the discovered. You know, if you're talking even just like Isaac Newton with calculus, right? Like, where does calculus come from? It's already sitting there outside the realm of human knowledge, but you can just like see it, you figure it out, and it's none of it's in the real world yet. It's still just in your brain, figuring out, is this a real thing or not? And then there's this moment where it just bloop, now it's part of the human universe, right? And it's a chaotic, horrifying, and amazing kind of process that I've found, either in music creation or stream creation or really any creative endeavor. And I'm sure any artist or other creative individuals out there can identify how strangely unique that particular process is. So I thought it would be great if we could start off with me reading that attempt to captivate the moment in written word as a launching point to get us back into the mindset we were at 4 weeks ago.
No, awesome. Absolutely go for it.
Right.
Absolutely go for it.
It's a little lengthy, but so's the process. So, I mean, you know, it's fitting. It's fitting. All right. So here we go. Somewhere between frustration and anger, there lies a realm of sustained angst-like dissatisfaction with the world. a body and mind trapped between a void of those things that rush in to fill it. As if a translator or a conjurer whose lot is none but to hold the threshold and transcribe the arts and philosophies that come pouring through so as to be applicable to the world who has never seen them before. Failure is great here, as is loss. But the scant, sporadic, unpredictable successes give such looming and overwhelming hope that one will continue on unabated at great length, seeking the next restoration from a new success. Entire gaps of life bridged by just 2 small victories. Such minor, seemingly insignificant beauties, for whatever reason, compel the individual to endure whatever plight and forever how long. No matter how unilluminated and intangible the next win may be, just knowing one came previously fortifies the soul to be steadfast and stalwart through it all, in both defiance and unwavering composure. Faith is not good enough of a word. Faith implies a humility of agnosticism, knowing it could all be made up, but choosing to believe it anyway. Fact is too sure. There is no concrete in this in-between realm. Conviction. Conviction, that is what is needed to endure here. And the simplest triumph, like a small seed, can grow the most powerful, sturdy, and strong-rooted bastion of a tree. But this tree lacks nourishment. It is an endless hunger, a ceaseless biting cold, an unrelenting fatigue. How can such a tree grow where there is no soil to nourish it? How can such a dandelion bloom out of the solid concrete? These are the tests of such a duty. To not fall ill to the lacking in understanding, to not become the prey of desiring weakness, of having an excuse just for once, to not be the strong one, to not be alone. But to create is to be alone. To possess a knowledge, a vision, an idea not yet in existence is to possess something unshared and not understood. How can one find comrades in something no one has yet experienced? Brain chemistry is a tricky beast. Hunger, sleep, mood, they all cycle independently. Each, when low, easily tackled in isolation. But in the trying times when the most diabolical synchronations of lows unfolds in an otherwise time-free cycle, a true beast is born, one that cannot be slain, only outwitted and outlasted. Simply avoid the attacks for long enough, and it will lose interest and move on to the easier prey. But the quick and the dead are sharply and expediently defined here. So onward, or rather, noward, here, standing, bridging, the unknown and the known for as long as time allows. Both guardian and ambassador, both sufferer and lauder, both lover and loser. Life and death are eternally in love, forbidden to touch, else annihilation occur for both. Instead, life sends gifts that can grow, wisen, and form great tales. Death receives these gifts, each one unique and cherished. We are the gifts. We are the messages of love.
Wow. Wow. Well put. Well put. There's so much imagery that you had in there that that like when I'm going through my own creative process, I key in on. Something that really that struck me like right in the middle there is you're talking about the dandelion.
Mm-hmm.
And how, you know, I very much agree with that in a creative process, you damn well better be a dandelion. And if you wonder what I mean by that, or anybody out there is wondering what I mean by that, roses will not only not grow, but will die if the pH in the soil is wrong. As Shen's pointed out, dandelions are like, yeah, concrete, let's go, you know, and that's, and you have to be like, if you're going to grow, especially if you're going to grow in any kind of, not just a creative space, a creative space is yours to have no matter where you are or what you do. But if you're going to grow in a competitive creative space, suddenly that becomes a different animal, which means that now you're going to be creative, but you're also going to be tougher while you're doing it. And this is such a timely conversation, Shens, because I have been really dwelling very heavily. Now, a lot of people know now that I have this I've redone the studio basically, and
Mm-hmm.
I have
Lighting looks
new equipment to work
fantastic, by
with.
the
I have
way.
new toys. What's that?
Lighting looks fantastic, by the way.
Oh, thank you. But I have all the, these new things to work with now. And something I've been trying to communicate to the community is that, I mean, yeah, it's cool. All right. It's always cool to have new tools to work with, but they're nothing more than tools until you have actually started to do things with them. And
Mm-hmm.
that's kind of where my mind is going now is, now that I have this, now that my internet is stabilized again, now that I'm still waiting for a key light to come in. So I have a couple things there waiting for too. But the bottom line is, it's not about the equipment itself. It's about, now my mind is going to, okay, now what am I going to do?
Mm.
Now what's
Yep.
next? We always think of things in terms of money. So we don't think of getting the equipment as the easy part. But when it comes to the creative process side of it, getting the equipment is the easy part.
Yeah, as tough as it is sometimes, it's
Yeah, yeah.
just the beginning.
A lot of saving up, a lot of planning, a lot of research, because you don't, when money is tight and money is precious, and to a lot of content creators it is, you definitely don't want to spend $100 on the wrong thing,
Yeah.
or something as simple as the wrong light or whatever, and you've set yourself back. Now you have to wait to save the money up to get the next thing, and so it becomes. But then the challenge shifts, and it is. I very much appreciate it. It's a very beautiful place to be. It's like, now what do I do?
Mm-hmm.
Now, visually, audio, like what comes next? How am I going to use it? And how am I going to use it in ways that my fellow creators and my community especially is going to appreciate it without driving them crazy along the way? You know, I get asked so much about why we don't do the kaleidoscope scenes anymore. And the kaleidoscope scenes are going to come back. But you wouldn't believe how many people, as cool as that was, how many people that drove away from doing it too much.
Mm-hmm.
Because it was, there's a certain beauty to creation.
Mm-hmm.
And if you overshoot that mark, now you've gone from the beauty of creation to overloading the senses.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes for artistic purposes, you want to do that. But if you overdo that, then it loses that beauty and that harmony of it, and now it has become just an assault.
Yeah.
And there is definitely a difference between the two.
And there's also something to be said for formatting.
Mm-hmm.
And if people come into a stream expecting to achieve one thing and they're being given another intermittently, there's an art to making that work. It's not just gonna it's not just gonna mesh.
Yeah.
You gotta get it just right. So there's a lot of experimentation required to figure out what that balance is, and maybe you do it in the beginning or maybe you do it at the end, but maybe interspersing might not be the right situation for that, but you don't know until you try. But I like it myself, but that's because I'm not trying to grind out points.
Yeah, I know. It's a very different, and you and I are very much there within the marbles community, Shens. It's not about like grinding out the points and all that. We're creating,
Mm-hmm.
we're creating and we're building communities, and that is very, very, and I can't stress this with my fellow like marble streamers and all that enough. It is very freeing when you say, this is about the community.
Yeah.
This isn't about the points. I'm sorry, I'm not going to get to race X tonight.
Mm-hmm.
But we've gone as far as we're going to go tonight, and everybody's starting to get tired and all that. So we're going to call it a night, and we'll pick back up again tomorrow. But when it becomes about the beauty of the content and the beauty of the creation, that is the absolute sweet spot.
Yeah.
For me, I can't tell you how much that point means to me. I'm not afraid of failure, like you talked about failure during that too. I'm not afraid of failure. I never was. I get excited by failure, and everybody looks at me like I've got two heads when I say that. But when I screw up, like I've done it on stream.
Yeah.
It's like, hey guys, look at this, and everybody's like, oh, all right, moving on. You know, and that's fine. That's fine. It's about learning what you love to do and what your audience is going to love to watch. You know, and what your community is going to enjoy being a part of it. It does. It happens all the time. But if you start getting scared of that rejection, your community will generally forgive you too, because your community is there for you. They get to know you.
Yeah. And
so
and if they don't, maybe restructure your community.
yeah. You might want to think about how you're building at that point. Yeah. But if you suddenly find yourself afraid to try, now you have a new problem on your hands that you don't want, because it's a struggle to get past the point of being afraid of failure to begin with. Once you're there, once you've gotten yourself there, you just want to make sure you don't fall back. And I've seen a lot of people do that. It's like, oh, so much was, and it's usually after a period of everything working really well. And it's like, everything was working so well for 3 months. And now all of a sudden I'm trying new things and they don't like it. It's like, well, don't stop.
Yeah.
If you stop trying, it's going to get boring for you and them. You know, that's a lot of people are just afraid of that. They're afraid of failure as part of, especially when you're doing something creative, because you put a lot of creative process means you're putting a lot of heart and soul.
It's a part of you.
So when it isn't well received, you feel that feeling in your chest, you know, and it's like, oh man, I did all this. I took 2 days off to get this done. Why is this such a big deal? But
yeah, and kind of touching on what you just brought up there with the 3 months is that I think, because there's a lot of people who have been asking me questions about the recent dynamic changes in marbles, either people who have been streaming and are struggling to keep relevant with how many more people are coming in, and other people who are coming in are like, hey, I want to get in on this, right? And there's two things I think people generally underestimate, or rather don't anticipate properly. The first being the importance of a splash. I mean, yeah, it's good to get your name out there when you first start, and that can help you get an initial boost. But even if you like get a pixel tournament, or you partner in on someone else's event, and you're hitting that 50, 100 viewers, maybe 150 viewers, crushing it on your first Marvel stream, right?
Yeah.
The next stream, you're going to have 10 people. If you're lucky. You're going to have 10 people. And that, it doesn't mean things are going wrong. Yeah. It's just, you are more than an event. And you need to you need to recognize that, right? The 150 people that were there for the event are there for the event, not for you. But those 10 people that came back the next day are there for you, which means you did something right for those 10 people. And there are your seeds that are going to grow your community in. Yeah. But then going into the people that are struggling now, those seeds can only grow so much. And if they're not planting new seeds, or if you're not nurturing them enough to produce seeds in the first place, then you're going to need to make a change. Yeah. Or everything's just going to wither and die. So I think those are two things people really don't anticipate properly, is one, how slow the start really is, and then two, how important that small little start actually is. Yeah. I think the best analogy that I have used with people, like while I'm teaching classes, or whether I'm like talking to somebody one-on-one that's just looking for some basic advice, is especially when you get started with streaming in general, you've got to remember that it's literally a rocket ship. And what does a rocket ship do? It burns the most fuel getting up off the ground. Once it's up off the ground, it takes less fuel to keep it going. You still have to burn fuel. You still have to put energy and passion and just everything you have into it if you really want it to work for you. But you're going to burn the most fuel getting up off the ground, and it's very frustrating in the beginning, because it's like, dude, I'm only 2 months into it and I've only got 10 people. Well, guess what? You're actually ahead of the game. If you've got 10 people after 2 months, that's good,
Because let me tell you how many people I know from when I started 2 years ago, and they're still at 1 or 2.
Yep.
And they haven't budged. That means that you're actually putting something out there that people want to be a part of.
Yep.
And by the way, as a side note, that frustration never goes away because you're going to hit plateaus like you know, and I watched it happen with my own channel. Like the first plateau was 20, and then it was like in the 40s and 50s, and I sat there for months. I couldn't figure out what to do to get out of there. And at that point I was full time, and I'm like, you know, it's like, what am I supposed to do here to make this grow? Because when you're doing it full time, of course the risks change. And because I didn't want to irritate my community, I wanted my community there with me. I just wanted it bigger.
Yeah.
And then you figure that out, and then you hit one in the 70s, and then you hit one maybe in the 90s or something like that. And I talk to streamers now with hundreds of viewers, and I make this point to people all the time: hundreds of viewers. You think that they would be happy with that? Oh no, the ambition doesn't change. The ambition is still there. It's like, okay, now how do I get over 1,000?
Yep.
How do I get to 10,000?
Yeah.
You know, and I think that is something I have immense respect for, by the way, that drive of never being satisfied. And like, these are some very creative, very entertaining, very fun streamers, and they're still out there pushing. It's like, where's that next level? That's the kind of thing that I actually aspire to. That's why I look up to certain streamers, because they just don't quit. You know,
and that's kind of the part of it, is you have to have a goal in mind. If you reach your goal and there's no next goal, well, then you're done. Turn stream off, do something else. You're done. Congratulations, you hit your goal. See you next time, right? So if you don't have a goal for after you achieve your current goal, you're going nowhere, because you don't have anywhere to go.
There were. Oh, go ahead.
Any thoughts on Geezer's question? That seems relatively relevant.
What business aspects should a streamer... Oh, this is nice. I can actually see it on your screen right in front of me here.
Ooh.
What business aspects should a streamer focus on at the start for future benefit? Actually, Geezer, beautiful answer to that question. You shouldn't. You shouldn't. At the beginning, what you should be focusing on is your creativity. You should be focusing on what kind of channel you want to build. You shouldn't even really start worrying too much about the business side of things until you actually start getting, and I don't mean just like a paycheck from Twitch, okay? You start getting regular ones.
Yeah.
All right. I mean, you get like I still remember that Twitch was the very first time that from my content, I actually got, I need to shift this just a little bit. It was the first time from my content I actually got a paycheck, and I still remember it. It was $115.
Yeah.
And I did backflips. I bought myself a new video card with it, actually, is what I did. That was my thing at the time.
Mine was 112 in October.
Was that? Oh, it's an awesome feeling. It's like, oh my God, I got paid for doing something creative. This just has never, you know, outside, there were a couple little acting jobs and voice acting jobs I did, but like to do something that was really all me, and to actually get that was like, man, that's amazing. But it doesn't really, you don't have to start worrying about a lot of the business aspects of it until it starts rolling in on a regular basis. What you want to worry about up front, Geezer, is getting yourself to that point.
Yeah.
So
community is a big part of that.
Build your community, build your creativity, look at what you're doing, look within, and here's the ultimate in creativity, by the way, and it's also one of the frustrations, is streaming, and every streamer is on a budget. Don't let anybody ever kid you about that.
Even DNP3.
Even DNP3. So it's
a big budget, but he's budgeting. I'm telling you.
Yeah, but he's still budgeted. But we've got it within it's creativity within a framework. You know, I'm limited by the fact that, and I know, wah, poor me, but I'm limited by the fact that I only have one computer right now.
Mm-hmm.
To ultimately do the visual wizardry and all that I want to do, it is going to take two computers. I need one running the game. Like if all I was doing was just chatting streams all the time, that wouldn't be an issue. But I need one computer running the game and the other to do all the wizardry I want to do.
Yep.
Because I put that much strain on my system. And again, so now the challenge, it's not a matter of saying to yourself, I can't do that. I always hate those words. I always hate those words. And I understand that some people don't have equipment that they couldn't stream with any day of the week. I get that. But so often I hear, well, I can't do that. Well, actually, yes, you could. But you've got to look up the techniques and you got to take the time to figure out, you know, like what settings. Like everybody wondered why I ran marbles at medium settings for so long. And it was because with my video card, I needed the extra graphical horsepower for the other things I was doing with the blacklight streams and all that. So it's you again, Geezer, to answer your question, the bottom line is focus on what builds your community. Start getting out there on social media. Make sure your streams are a warm, loving place for people to be, but don't over stream. Make sure that you are leaving time for you to be able to do the other things that need to be done. Believe me, that is going to pay off up the road.
We have a guest.
But focusing on building and networking and all that is what you need to be focusing on. The business side of it, trust me, that will come in time. And it will hit you when it comes. All right. All of a sudden you're going to realize, wait a minute, I'm making, even if it's only a couple $100 a month or $300 a month, now you have to start thinking about where you're going to put the money, what you're going to, you know, what you're going to do. Like, okay, how do I now start reinvesting? That's where the business side starts to kick in. Yep. It's like, how do I reinvest? A lot of the things that I've done recently is me reinvesting in the channel. The other thing you want to do from a business side is every business decision you make sure that you keep your community in mind.
Yeah.
You absolutely have to do that. You know, don't make it might be, don't go for a quick cash grab if it's going to throw your community off. That doesn't work. I've turned down, I'm doing my very first sponsored stream tonight, but to get to this point, I've turned down 4 others.
Yeah.
Because it wouldn't fit at all. Like tonight will be a fun little stream to do and all that, and it's a fun little game. It's a fun little mobile game, and we're gonna really enjoy it, and we'll have a good time with it. But like some of the other things people have approached me with out of left field, and I'm like, that doesn't fit the theme of the channel at all. Like my community wouldn't even want to touch this, you know? The other thing, Geezer, too, to keep in mind, though, I will tell you this from a very early business perspective. When you are a small streamer, okay, and I don't like using those words, but by small streamer, I mean new streamer, growing streamer, just getting started, just starting to build, you're going to have a number of people approach you for quote unquote sponsorships and partnerships. They love throwing those words, an affiliate. They love throwing those words around where they want you to buy something, or they say, hey, if you sell so many of X, we'll give you a free one kind of thing. Don't fall in for any of that.
Nope.
Please don't. Please don't. It's just a come on to try and sell you something else, or try to get you to sell something for you without anything in return. The best example I can use of that is I had somebody approach me about a gamer chair, and they're like, if you sell 5 of them, we will customize one for you and send it to you. And I'm like, that's great. In the meantime, are you going to send me another gamer chair so I can try it out and I can speak to my community about it so I can actually sell the 5 chairs you want me to sell? Well, no, but you can buy one from this site. It's like, no, that's not how this works.
And you always want to keep in mind the direction of aggregate, as it were. So someone who's doing something like that is offering maybe 100 other people the same thing. So they're getting 100 of theirs back and only giving 1 out, right? So always keep in mind what direction that aggregate's going. And most of the time it's going to the person making the offer. So whatever you're giving them, percentage-wise, you're getting much less back. It's divided by all the other people doing it.
Yeah.
So the only time those things work is when they're popular, and the more popular they are, the less percentage you're getting out of it. So it never works. It works for the person
Yeah.
doing it, but it doesn't work for anyone joining in
When
on it.
you're yeah, when you're approached by a true sponsorship, you will know. And I tell people all the time, especially to the community, especially to the marbles community, that if you're ever approached about something and you're curious as to whether or not it's a legitimate offer or whether it's a good idea, don't ever hesitate to approach me on that.
Yep.
You know, I'm always happy to look those things over. My whole background, my last two jobs before content creation were both business, one of which I was running a business. We talked about that in the last podcast a little bit. And it amazes me the things, because a lot of streamers haven't had that experience, and I appreciate that, but the number of things that streamers get sucked into because they don't realize what's happening. They just get really excited. It's like, ooh, sponsorship, ooh, partnership, and they want to like jump right into it. It's like,
Yeah.
and I pull out my inner Pixel by Pixel studios when this kind of thing comes up. It's like, and what value are you getting from this? What value is your community getting from this? He uses those words with me all the time, and he's right.
Yeah.
He's right. You got to think about, it's hard to be selfish in a people business like this, because we're very loving, very caring individuals, especially in this community. But you're not being selfish when you're making sure that you're taking care of yourself, and by taking care of yourself, you're also taking care of your community, because they will try to take you and your influence for a ride, and you got to make sure that does not happen.
Absolutely. So just to kind of wrap up that one thing, since we're still on the topic, anything you want to discuss at length, the Discord link is a great place to do that. There you can have an unlimited length of message, well, limited by Discord's length. So if you have any long contributions you'd like to make to those kinds of topics, or anything we talk about during this stream, feel free to jump in there and get it going. Now to kind of switch the direction back to more you, sir, since you are my guest. This is literally my first question. Question numero uno of my 10 prepared questions. And that is, what motivates you to do good? And I ask this because I have a history, for me personally, in this realm, and that for whatever reason, maybe I'm a sociopath, who knows, but anytime I see someone being like genuinely, overtly kind and happy, I'm like, they can't be like that in their brain, right? No one is that genuinely happy and selfless all the time in their head. They gotta have something negative or something selfish going on in their mind. It just, for whatever reason, it usually comes off as fake to me.
Yeah.
To put your anxieties aside, I don't get that from you. You definitely strike me as a genuine individual. So I'm not trying to call you out here in the middle of the stream, but so that's kind of what I'm touching on. Is there are people who I'm very certain are doing everything only because it's what you're supposed to do as a human in society, and the more they do it, the higher they get up in society, and so they keep doing it, and they actually don't care for any of it in their head, but they're just putting up with it because that's all they know how to do to exist. But then there are people like yourself who I think are a bit more genuine with their care and outreach. And I'm wondering what personally motivates you in that kind of aspect.
Shens, can I put it like very bluntly?
Yeah.
The world doesn't need another asshole. All right. There's so much. I don't know. Shens, I'm going to be honest with you. I don't always know where it comes from. I just get such incredible joy, and I think the word here that I really need to use is fulfillment from making other people happy, making other people smile. I really, honestly, if you want to know where the selfish part of it comes from, there actually is a small selfish part where that comes from, and that is, I get this really big kick out of entertaining people.
Yeah.
So my feedback, my like the way I get paid back from the community is the laughter, is the jokes that I get to make. Like everybody sets out, and I think this is one of the things that's actually helped make the channel more successful is that like everybody sets out with a very warm-hearted goal in mind in streaming. I shouldn't say that. Let me take that back. A lot of streamers that I've met, that I've had a chance to associate with, set out with a very warm aspect in streaming, and that is they're going to be there with people, right? They want to hang with people all day. They want to talk with people all day, and that in and of itself is a great goal. That socializing, that love, that's a fantastic goal. But the other half of their brain is going, and yeah, we're going to make lots of money. And it's like, okay, here, let me take you and sit you down and let me tell you how this really works, okay? Yep. Because if you think that's going to just happen, it's not. And we talk about that all the time as streamers. But where some people's goals were money, my goal, what I was in love with, was the idea of having influence. It's not about the money. It was more about having influence, being an influencer. That was, if I had like a somewhat selfish goal, that might have been like probably where it was for me, at least in the beginning. And what happens is when you do suddenly realize that you do have some influence, and that, you know, people are at least willing to listen to you for a bit, now it becomes a responsibility. So you can either take that responsibility and you can use it for really bad means, or you can use it for really helpful means. And what I have decided to do is to take that and use that for charitable means. How do we help other people out? How do we, and a lot of people in the marbles community actually are doing this right now too. We're trying to figure out, how do we give back? And how do we pay forward? Yep. Using tonight's stream as an example, it's a sponsored stream, and I make no secrets of the fact that we've got 2 stretch goals, and if we hit those, they sponsor us more. What I'm doing is I'm taking that extra money, if we hit those stretch goals, and that's getting donated to the Humane Society COVID-19 Relief Fund.
Nice.
So when you, and the point I'm trying to make with that is, you can use these things, these gifts that you're being given, to bring additional joy back. Because, to go back to what I very first said to you, which was the world doesn't need another asshole, it really doesn't. We need more people doing more good things, and really putting that out there and really setting that example. And if I want to wield influence, that's the way I want to wield that influence. That's Absolutely. Really that is my biggest goal right there, because when you have influence, there's a lot of good that you can do with that, more so than anything else. You know, you can do good with money too, but money will be gone in a day. Yeah. But, you know, in influence and all that is a very ongoing thing, and you can use that to build a lot and do a lot of good things for people. I've been able to help a lot of people out with that. And there's just, not to make it sound cheesy, Shens, but it's something that at this point in my life, because I've had to play business roles, and I've had to do things because of business that I didn't really feel were me. To be able to be in a business now where I can do things that I feel are me, is a real joy. And that's where that constant happiness comes from. The other thing I do need to say to that, on a more personal note, and I've never kept this hidden either, is that the way I am on camera is not how I am, of course, all the time. I have my moods, I have my moments. Ask my wife, ask my daughter, you know. They're rare, but they happen. I'm a human just like everybody else is. But one of the most human things that I deal with on a daily basis, and some days it really is a struggle, is I do deal with depression. I do deal with clinical depression, and to be able to be there with people and perform for them alleviates that. It makes that all go away. And not only does it make that all go away, Shens, but it puts me in a position where I can actually help them, like genuinely help them. Like, and I don't mean, and by that I don't mean I'm going to be depressed with them. It means I understand where you're coming from, but now I've been uplifted, so let me help uplift you too.
And that's a big part of it, is knowing how to go about that. Because there are plenty of instances where someone's trying to help, but because
Yeah.
they've never been in that situation, they're going in the wrong direction or they're coming from the wrong angle, and
Yeah.
sometimes even making it worse. So it can be a little tricky with that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. It's very, there are times where, and I'm starting to see this now, with the growth of my channel, there are times where, and that's what I was talking about, like you want to make sure that you pay very close attention to like who you work with, how you work with them, because everything that you do is going to be that reflection back on you and back on your community. So you want to make sure that you're always there. You know, you want to make sure that you're there representing both, and that you act with I always tell people, act with kindness.
Yeah.
Think about what your community wants, what they need. Think about how you can reach out and help others, help other streamers, things, help anybody else that's in a position where you can help them. And ideas will start to come from that. It's how you get tied in with, you'll find, and it takes time. Just like we talk about growth takes time, it takes time. It takes time to find where you want to be, and it takes time to find places that, how do I want to put this? Find places where you're going to be really happy, but you're also really helping at the same time. It took me a long time to before I found Humane.
Yeah.
And got to work very closely with Humane, and oh my God, talk about happiness on a daily basis. Because I love animals. All my animals are rescues themselves, and I've worked with all kinds of animals. I know you and I have talked about that before, but it's again, like something that's very me, and now I get to make that a part of the content. So, but and that's, I don't know if that's a longer answer than you were looking for, Sheds, but that's
what this is all about.
That's where all that love and happiness and joy really comes from. It's very, I have trouble putting it into words sometimes because it's very deep rooted, and the gratitude that I have towards my community is very deep rooted. So that's talk about gratitude. Gratitude is one thing where I always feel words fall short. It's very hard sometimes to tell your community like how much you care about them and how much you can say the words, but it always feels, and no matter how you phrase it, it always feels to me like it's always falling short. Like there's always like something else I could say, or something more I could say
Right.
to them about that.
Good stuff. Well, I feel like I've been leading pretty heavily so far. If you want to take the reins for the last portion of the first half, feel free.
Sure. And my software failed me, by the way. The last 3 questions that I had for you fell off of my list, so I'll fly by the seat of my pants for those. But along the lines of what you were talking about, I had a great question that I wanted to ask you right off the bat, and that is, what drives you to create? What is your?
How do you generate new ideas? Oh God, he beat me to it. God. That was gonna be my question.
What drives you? We can talk about it. If that was going to be one of your questions anyway, let's have the discussion right now. But you start. You lead. What drives you to create?
For me, it's not really a choice. There's a lot of different sayings about idle hands or empty minds or all these other things, but really, the human brain is an incredibly rare occurrence in the universe, and to our knowledge is the only awareness that the universe has of itself, to the extent that it exists. Right? Clearly we don't know to what extent the universe exists, but compared to anything else we know of, we know the most. So we're as close to a consciousness as the universe gets right now, to our knowledge. And there's only been about 90 billion of us. Even less of those have actually gotten some idea of what this universe we're in is. And the human brain is like, what, 3-4 pounds? Not much. And it's less than a cubic meter in a universe immeasurably big. Even just the observable universe is immeasurably big. So we're like little diamonds in this gigantic thing. And because we're such a unique thing, and we're such a small thing and such a rare thing, it needs to be taken care of. It needs to be valued. It needs to be appreciated for what it is, just like any rare gem or any unique creation. And so to waste your one human brain on only making that one human brain's life good is, in my opinion, an ethical failure, right? Because one human mind can make so many more human minds better. And because of how valuable and precious each human mind is, that should be the goal. And to waste a very precious human mind on just making one human mind better when it could be making hundreds better is, in my opinion, an ethical failure.
Yeah.
And so anything you can do, no matter what your lot in life is, no matter what hand you've been dealt, as long as you make more than just your human brain better, you are increasing the value of the human mind, and that is the right direction to go.
Yeah. So much of creativity is wasted when it's not involving others. Creativity for your own satisfaction is a wonderful thing. And that is, you know, like you hear about artists doing art for themselves, you know, when they finally get to the point where I'm doing things like, you know, you hear a lot of musicians doing that too. Like they get later on in their career. Sting used to talk about that, actually. You know, how he was always thinking about his audience, and then as he got further along in his career, especially after he left the police and all that, then he started thinking about what kind of music would make him and his wife happy.
Right.
I remember listening to him to an interview on doing that, and there is definitely a lot to be said for that. I think there's a balance there where you can keep yourself happy as well as others, but human potential is so limitless, and people don't. We've been talking about this a lot too. Human potential is so limitless, and people don't realize just how limitless it really is. There's always something more to reach for. There's always that next thing. And when you can do that to make other people either happy or pull them out of a bad day, or more educated or more informed, or when we start getting into philosophy like you and I like to talk about from time to time, like make them maybe think about things a little bit differently, which will also enrich their lives. You know, there are so many different ways that creativity can be approached. That's why it's creativity.
Yeah.
It's an open slate for you. The paintbrushes you have are the tools you have to work with. So in our medium, of course, it's cameras and computers and lighting and whatever else we want to get involved with. But every piece of creativity has a different tool set. So part of the fun is looking at that tool set again and going, okay, what do I want to build today? How am I going to enrich today? Whose life am I going to make better? Who am I going to make think differently? And that to me is a very large part of creation, like what drives me to create. I want to bring joy. I spent so much of my life sad. I really did. And a lot of it was like so many people, Shens, it was so self-imposed. It really was. Like, you know, so many people are willing to recognize that their choices are a lot of what influences where they're at now. So coming to that realization, and when I really woke up to what I was doing to myself, that was when things started to change for me a bit too, in terms of my own happiness, you know. But then it was like, now that I've got this, you can't just walk up to somebody on the street and say, hey, I've had this great revelation. You need to come along and join me with this. It doesn't work. So then it becomes a question of, okay, from the creative side of things, how do I reach out to people without scaring them to death? You know, it's like, because when you have these revelations, whether you call them epiphanies or whatever you want to call them, whatever word you want to use, you're very excited. The person standing 5 feet to your right may not be anywhere near as excited about it as you are. For you, it's a personal thing. But then a lot of it for me was, again, how do we share this joy? How do we let other people know that their potential is just as limitless? They just have to be willing to work at it and figure out exactly how they're going to make that happen for themselves.
And that's kind of why I wanted to read the thing that I did at the beginning, because it kind of touches on that. Like, you are literally breaching the two doorways between what everyone knows and what everyone doesn't know. And you're alone in there. There's no one you can relate with because the things you're getting coming in your life haven't been exposed to the rest of the world yet.
Yeah.
So you have to figure out how to be that arbiter, how to be that transition space between what isn't created and what is created. And it's not easy.
Yeah, it is. It's weird. You know, what do you do? It's a very hard question to answer as a creator is what do you do when you're the first person that walked through the other doorway and nobody else is willing to believe you that X is possible? It's like, no, it's possible. See, I'm doing it. I'm doing it right now. It was one of the reasons I wanted to become a teacher was because like, how do you show people it's possible until it's actually in their lap, especially if they're working towards something that requires a higher level of success. And the other thing that's important is to not, while you're trying to show people what's possible, to not let yourself get distracted along the way. That's a very real left turn that so many people take while they're trying to show others what's possible. They're trying to show other people what's going on. I get asked so much now since I did it, like everybody expected me. Here's what everybody expected. Okay. I'm going to just use this as a really quick example. A couple of months ago, I said, I'm taking Twitch partnership, and I'm moving it over here. And everybody expected me 2 months later, 3 months later, whatever, to say, you know what? No, I've changed my mind. That is really important. I'm going back and I'm chasing back after that. And I didn't do that.
Yep.
And the point I'm trying to make, the reason I chose that path, it still is over here somewhere. It's still in my peripheral. But the reason that I haven't actually been actively pursuing it is because I realized what a distraction it had become. You know, I can do so much more and I can build so much more. And if you want to talk about bridging between the doorways, bridging between those doorways is a very monumental task at times.
Yep.
So if I'm going to make that a goal, which I do, then I don't need those extra distractions while I'm trying to do that. You know, it's you know, you're what's important. You know, telling people all the time, you're what's important. I need to not just say that, I need to act that as well. So, and anything that pulls away from that doesn't fly in my book. But again, yeah, that drive to create that bridge. And when you're the first person on the other side of that door going, ooh, look at all this cool shit that's around here. Wow, what is going on? And then but then everybody else that's still on the other side of the other doorway is like, what do you mean? No, I tried, or there's self-defeation going on, like, oh yeah, I tried that and that didn't work for me. It's like, no, you just have to do that for longer. It's not instant. You're gonna need to do that for at least 3 months before you start to see results on that kind of thing. But it's a tricky spot to be in. But at the same time, if again you want to talk about what drives you to create, that'll definitely drive you to create, is trying to find creative ways to bridge that gap.
Absolutely. Well, we approach the end of hour one, but not quite yet. Anything pressing, still relevant to the topics at hand, not yet gotten to?
Not that I can think of. How about you, Chet? Oh, Dangsilla, thank you for the kind words, by the way. I really do appreciate it.
It's Ocean City Coffee Company. It's delicious.
What brand of coffee is that? Yeah, you've got your Ocean City, and I've got my Starbucks and my baller cups. So
fantastic. Well, how about this? We'll tease out some midstream mix-up. It's the midstream mix-up. I don't know the overlay yet, but we just have to pretend. 2 ways we can go with this, my good friend. We're both theater people. And I guess we can kind of talk about this before we get officially into the midstream mix-up. What is your theatrical background in like a quick Cliff Notes Wikipedia entry?
In the non-verbose fashion, I do have my bachelor's in theater. I was trained to be a triple threat, with triple threat meaning dance, act, and sing. It got me 2 out of 3. I can move, but I can't dance by any means.
Yeah, yeah.
But a lot of it was, of course, it was again Cliff Notes version. Started in high school. Was one of those that always got the lead roles and all that.
Any productions of note?
What was that?
Productions of note.
Noises Off.
Okay.
In college, no, well, that was in college. You Can't Take It With You was high school. That was my first real like.
That's a good one to start with.
I studied Mortimer's role extensively.
That's a good one to start with.
Cary Grant, yeah. So, but there was, You Can't Take It With You, and doing the typical high school routine. I was into things growing up in rural areas. I was very much into things that were very creative, where most people were not. So while most people were still like working farms and playing football and all that stuff, I was singing, I was playing instruments, I was doing all that craziness. Nice. So, and from there, of course, when I was in, there's a couple of voice acting roles that I did. There were a lot of local acting, not getting paid very much for it, but it's just fun stuff and doing tech work and things like that. Yeah. And so that's pretty much the whole background. There was never a day that I never used those tools, and no matter what I was doing in terms of projecting and speaking well and all that. But the last couple of years, of course, have been completely reignited because I've been able to use a lot of those tools all over again. So
cool.
Yeah. How about yourself? What is
my theater started early because I was singing since I was 3. So a lot of. And it's something I actually wish I pursued professionally, which I didn't. An eternal regret of mine is I could have been a very good boy soprano, like professionally.
Yeah.
I sang at Carnegie Hall when I was 12, so like I could have gone there.
Oh wow!
But I didn't, and I regret it. So I was doing the first one I ever did was in church actually. There's a couple like churchy musicals, not like Godspell, but more like, Reformationist kind of churchy things. Mm-hmm. And it was based around Timothy, Silas, and Paul. So I was Timothy in the Timothy, Silas, and Paul musical. And I did Amal, and I eventually did Godspell as I was older in that church. And then in high school, I was doing, Guys and Dolls and Anything Goes and those things. And then in college, I was the pianist for my friend who was the music director for Company, which is a fun. I think that Company is a really good musical in that it's very good for creative direction. I feel like as a stage show, it will really show the character of a director with how much they choose to do with it. Because really, that's all up to how you do it. Like, are you going to put everyone on the stage at the same time and have like rooms, or are you going to switch rooms in and out? Like, how are you going to present it? How are you going to? Because it's a very dialogue kind of experience. So there's the visuals you do have to speak without saying anything. And it's, not so much like Sweeney Todd where it's all about the chair, right? It's kind of given when you have those things. But Company is much more like, well, there's not much going on, it's a bunch of people talking in a bunch of rooms, but what are you going to do with that, right?
Yeah.
And through there, people kind of liked what I was doing. So I became musical director for one of the musicals. I'm failing to remember the name of it. Whatever. And then after that one, because the first one I did was good, was Tommy. So I got to do Tommy my senior year. That was really fun. And I did a couple of one-act plays and stuff like that. And then since then, it's mostly just been singing gigs, not too much acting gigs. But that's because I do my own acting on stream every day.
Yeah. You definitely use those skills. Do you find, like, every time whenever somebody asks me like all the different shows I've done and all that, do you suffer from the same problem I do, where all of a sudden shows kind of like start to blend together?
Like, which one was that again?
You start mixing up names, like wait a minute, okay, I was Mortimer in Noise. No, I wasn't Mortimer in Noises Off. I was Gary in Noises Off. I was Mortimer in You Can't. No, it wasn't You Can't Take It With You either. What, that was Arsenic and Old
The
Lace.
giant plants from Fiddler in the Roof, right?
It's like you start losing track after a while of the different characters you've played. Have you ever, along these lines, just super quick, Shens, have you ever tried method acting?
Method acting. I think I would do really well with method acting. I haven't
Yeah.
really had an opportunity to do so. But the idea of living a role is very appealing to me. Same with like kind of that not investigative journalism, but beyond that, the exploratory journalism,
Yeah.
where like instead of going into the Amazon and talking to all the shamans about ayahuasca, like actually doing ayahuasca, right? Like like actually figure out what's going on, right?
Yeah.
Or, you know, don't just get that undercover hidden camera footage of a sweatshop in China. Actually work in a sweatshop in China for a month, right? Like
Yeah.
the people who actually put it in there. So that I always find that appealing. The people who are able to put their life aside, like it's still a part of their life. It's an experience of theirs, and it's them in that situation. But you know, going into it, it's a conscious decision to say, I'm going to put my life on hold, and I'm just going to live this different life for a while, so I can expand my experience of what it is to be a human being on this planet. So.
Not that I ever read the details of how things went down, but I remember when I found out that Anthony Hopkins was a method actor, and all I could think of was what was life like for his family during Silence of the Lambs. What was that like? Did he like live in a hotel?
Say, hopefully it was just a lot of reading and not too much acting.
Hello, front desk. Yes, I would like some liver with some fava beans and a nice light Chianti. I mean, like what went on there, you know? And I've never researched it, and I found out like long after I saw Silence of the Lambs, like that he was actually a method actor. But I did it. When we were doing Noises Off, I did it, and I did it for. I started actually. It wasn't the entire time we were going through rehearsals, of course, but I did it for the week before the show ran. And then for the 2 weeks that the show ran.
Yeah, I think that's actually good. Staying in character for the duration of your scheduled performances.
And I thought I was going to drive my friends crazy with it, but because we were a whole bunch of theater types, they loved it.
Yeah.
You know, and then by the time the week of the show, I had 2 other people doing it with me. Our director, who was also my acting teacher, gave us actually extra credit in our acting class. Not we didn't need it, but we got extra credit in our acting class because we actually stayed in character for 3 weeks. You know, we actually went to our families and all that and did it. It was an experience. I don't know if I could ever do it again or get away with it. I'd probably drive poor Mistress crazy if I ever did something like that. But
right.
Yeah. So well, anyway.
So how that all ties into the midstream mix-up. 2 ways we can go. We can either dabble in a little thespianism, as Evaders has rightly called us out on being, or we can just have a nice little story time of our own about something else that's part of our lives, and that's our professional retail experience. So which direction would you go? Would you like to do a little acting, or do you just want to keep it casual with some story time?
Let's see. Which way would we like to go with that? When you say a little bit of acting, what were you? You know what we could do? You know what? Let's do a little bit of story time.
Okay.
Let's do a little bit of story.
And then if we feel like we want to jump in, we can jump in.
We've got some fun stories to share.
Sure. All right. So I guess I'll start off to kind of get the ball. Sorry, I almost took your nose off there. My apologies.
Yeah, no, that's all right.
I'll start off just to get the ball rolling on that. I was a manager of an organic produce department for 4 years. And there's an interesting phenomenon that most of you probably have seen on Facebook, where an expert opinion is suddenly no longer a valid opinion, which I always find fascinating. just sitting there listening to someone be wrong for so long in so much detail, and you're just like, wow. like how could you be that wrong for that long with so much detail? Like what? Where? But like the short of it is, with organic produce, it's really a matter of transparency. The reason organic produce is popular as an idea is because it offers more transparency, right? Your conventional produce, you don't know what's been done to it. There's no legality requiring a record of fertilizers using, a record of pesticides used, a record of herbicides used, or what's been done to the product. So organic feigns transparency, right? So organic says, here's a list of everything we're not using. Oh, and by the way, here's 25 families of chemicals that we do allow. And here is an entire litany of not even talked about loopholes. For instance, chicken manure is an organic fertilizer and used quite extensively for a lot of things because it's very good. And we have a lot of chickens. So we have a lot of chicken manure. Seems good. But as you're likely aware, the large factory farms that produce chickens that are giving inadequate antibiotic dosages and using hormones, anyone who knows basic avian biology would know that the majority of those things are not absorbed by the birds, which is why the doses are so high and why you have to do it correctly or it's not effective. And where all that stuff goes is in the chicken manure. So the pepper you're eating that's organic could be completely grown on nothing but the excrement of hormone and antibiotic pumped chickens, right? And there's no transparency there. So it's a step in the right direction in building that transparency between production and consumer, which I think is the right direction to head just as a world in general. But people think it's the end all save all, and it's really just the first step. And it has a lot of stuff still not good about it. And to an extent, it makes sense that there's not, because you can't feed the world organically. It's not possible. In order to be organic, you have to let your field go feral for 3 years. Can't do anything to it. Just let it go wild for 3 years, till it all in, and then you start again. And you have to get inspected every month. You can't do that with nuts. You know, a nut tree takes 15 years to mature to produce nuts. 5 if you have a good modern hybrid, which you can't use because that's GMO, and therefore not organic, right? So, you know, unless you're going to replace every nut orchard in the world over the next 15 years and supplement the income of those farmers, it's not going to happen, right?
Yeah.
So it's a step in the right direction, but it's not great. And people they just knew so much better about organic and why it was so good and why it was a flawless operation and things they knew, and always asking like, well, it's organic, but is it GMO free? Well, it can't be listed as organic if it's not GMO free. That's part of the organic container. That's one of the things that has to happen to it. Oh, but I heard. Oh, but I read. I'm sure you did. But I wouldn't be good at my job. I wouldn't be passing monthly organic inspections and yearly federal organic inspections with A's and A pluses every year and every month if I didn't know my shit, right? So, like, maybe take my word for it. Maybe. So it's always that fun thing.
I don't believe a single word you're saying. Can I speak to your manager, please?
Yes, ma'am.
I don't believe this.
Yes, ma'am.
I didn't come here to argue with
yes,
you.
ma'am.
Okay, that isn't what
Sure,
I
ma'am.
came here to do.
Absolutely, ma'am.
All right.
Yep.
Just give me my organic avocados and I'm leaving. Okay.
Okay, ma'am. And I am the manager, so have a good day with that.
Well, then I want to talk to the owner then.
Look,
Oh, okay.
There's always somebody else they want to talk to beyond that, right?
And that's what I love, like, because every Thursday I would actually close the store. So the store managers trusted me so much that I was the only non-store manager they allowed to close the store at night with no other store manager around. So I was like the backup assistant store manager. So there were a lot of Thursday nights where I'm going around as Mr. Produce guy on the floor. You know, I'm slinging fruit and I'm reorganizing the bananas and everything. And so I just look like some, you know, run-of-the-mill extra pair of hands on the floor, and then they call for the store manager, and then the guy who's handling all the rotten bananas walks up to the front, says, yes, what do you need? They're like, wait a minute, you? It's like, yeah, me, you want to get the fuck out of my store, or do you want some help? Like,
Yeah, sometimes, you know, it's so funny in customer service, right? And you know a lot of my experience was with GameStop, but in customer service, like there are times that you really do need to say that to somebody, you know, and you can't, and you don't, but somewhere in the back of their mind, it's like I'm trying to help you. Why won't you let me help you? If you won't let me help you, then leave. It's like, it's that simple at this point, okay?
And
I
a lot
can't
of
help
people,
you if you don't listen to me.
Yeah, and a lot of people, they don't actually want help. They just want to hear, "Oh, you're right." Like that's what
Yeah.
they're really looking for. They don't want help. They don't want to actually know. They just want to hear, "Oh, you're right."
Yeah.
They want to feel
Yeah, they just-
vindicated.
there's a big difference between and I won't go philosophical right now because right now I know it's story time, but there's a big difference between wanting to know what the truth is and wanting somebody to just simply tell you that you're right. There's actually a very like if these are the 2 points, the gap is like this. Okay, I can't even show it on the camera. All right, and you see that's one of the it's one of the hardest parts of customer service, but it's also one of the most fascinating points of that human experiment. You know, anybody that's worked in customer service knows it's a giant human experiment, and you get to see the absolute best of mankind and the absolute worst. And it amazes me though, like people just want to hear they're correct, and you know, you can move on. It takes a long time, especially in larger commercial atmospheres, to get customers that know you enough to know that they can trust your opinion, that you're not going to, you know, that they'll actually listen. Otherwise it's just, no, I did my homework on spot, I'm good, you know, kind of thing.
So what was your worst, or one of your worst customer situations?
One of my worst customer situations?
Yes.
My favorite story to tell is one of the best ones I had, which is it's comedic, but I'll save that. The worst one I ever had was one that every time I made a step to try and correct the problem, and this is when I was working at GameStop, every time I made a step to try and correct the problem, I'd find something else that made it worse, and then I would have to call my district manager again and explain the whole situation all over again. I was an assistant manager at that point, and my district manager, luckily my district manager knew me and liked me, you know, so she knew that I wouldn't call her unless there was something really, really wrong, or I was asking to go way outside of policy. Now, for good reason, with GameStop, when you open up a brand new game, it cannot be returned unless the game disc itself is truly defective.
Right.
Okay, and there's good reason for that, because especially during that era, that's when there were codes included in the cases, and you know, people were doing all kinds of tricks to try and get the codes and not actually buy the game, and so on and so on. So this was in the era of when Skylanders came out. The second Skylanders game came out, which I was very much involved in. And what reminded me of this is you talk about being an expert in an area and nobody wants to listen. Okay. So this woman comes in and immediately starts yelling at me. That's the first thing she did. I can't believe you sold me this game. I can't believe what garbage this is, on and on. So the first thing I have to do is get her to calm down. Yep. Luckily, we were in the store by ourselves. You know, I was working in a smaller GameStop at that point. It was quieter. It was in the middle of the day. So I'm like, you know, I finally got her settled down, and it's like, look, if you don't settle down, I cannot help you, and I'm going to have to ask you to leave. So she finally settles down, right? And then she says to me, this was the best part. Now, when it came to Skylanders, I was one of those that collected not only every game, but every single figure. I originally bought it for my daughter. Of course. And I ended up being the one to collect it all and play it all. Okay. So I really understood the game in and out. And the game itself came with 3 characters included in the pack, and you could make your way all the way through the game, no problem. All right, with those 3 characters. It's designed that way. Other characters would unlock like little side paths for little extra bonuses, but it wasn't a requirement. Right. The whole kit, you could play the whole game. So she comes in and she says, well, we can't beat the game. Now, as a gamer, I know this was my one mistake, Shens. I know that as a gamer, as soon as she said it, I smirked. I felt myself smirking as she said it. So she's like, I can't beat this game. And I'm sitting there going, because like not being able to beat the game is not a reason for return. Okay.
You good scrub.
So I could feel myself smirking. So that was one mistake right there. I'm sure because she was already worked up. She had herself all worked up when she came in the door. So I'm sure she didn't appreciate that. So I'm sitting there and I'm smirking. And I'm like, and I'm thinking to myself, this is Skylanders. You can't beat Skylanders. Like,
Right, yeah.
you die and you put another character on the portal and it lets you continue. Like is it? Are you really like? Are you playing it this way or what's? Tell me what's going on. So I told her. I said, really? I said, is there a problem with that? And she's like, well, you can't beat the game unless you buy more characters, and I'm not doing that. And I blinked a couple of times and I said, yeah, you can beat the game. And she looks at me square in the eye and goes,
oh boy.
She goes, well, I'm sure you don't play it. What do you know about it? Now, my other key holder is in the opposite corner of the store. All right. And he knew me very, very well. Okay. Now, this was mistake number 2 in a bad situation. He burst out laughing. He could not control himself. And I looked over and I'm like, Brian, is there a problem? And he's like, no. Just this game. He holds up a game case, right? He's like, it's just on this game case. He says, I'm so sorry. I'm going to finish straightening these out, right? And he's hiding in the corner. He puts his head back down like this and he's pretending he's shifting cases, right?
Reminds me like the Kevin Hart when he's like looking at his friend to lie for him. And it's like the message is not getting across. Like, what are you doing?
So I look back at her and I said, I assure you, I said, I have children, and I passed it off on my kids just to try and ease the situation a little bit. I have children. I have played this game all the way through. You can absolutely play this game with the 3 characters that are in the box. It's designed that way. I said, yes, there are some other little side paths that you can take if you have other characters that are other elements. But that is not a requirement. They're just little bonus areas where you can go into a room and get a chest or something like that. I said it's absolutely not necessary.
Yep.
Right? Well, much like the story you just related to me, it was the same exact thing. I knew absolutely nothing. And it got to the point where I'm like, you know what? Let me call my district manager. Let me see if I can make an exception. All right. So I call her, and luckily she answered right away. She was usually very busy, but she answered right away. And I explained the whole situation. And I could actually, this is the very first time in my life, Shens, that I could actually hear somebody rolling their eyes over the phone.
It's a weird sound, isn't it? It's a weird sound.
She was so good. She had tons of district manager experience. She was so good with it. She goes, the person is there with you now, isn't she? And I go, yes. She says, so you can't talk freely, can you? And I said, absolutely not. And she says, okay. She said, allow them to return it. Put a 10% shop warrant on it. That's a kind of game that somebody else will be able to pick it up. They can pick it up at a little bit of a discount. And that'll be it, right? Okay. So we get that all straightened around. And then I said, okay, go ahead and give me the box. I need to inspect it over to make sure. And by the way, where's the receipt?
Uh-oh.
No receipt. And I'm like, which is also supposed to be another phone call to your district manager, by the way, to get permission. So I called her and I left her a message. This time I left her a message and said, just so you know, no receipts. I'm looking them up through because she did have the membership card at least. I said, I do see the purchase through the membership card, so I'm going to use that. If that's a problem, I'm sorry, my bad. I just want to get her taken care of, right? So then I open up the box to inspect. And the box is filled with dog hair. So I'm like, and I'm looking at this and I'm going,
like it's been under the couch for a month.
And I go, this is loaded. And I actually then I started getting more blunt. I'm like, this is loaded with dog hair. She's like, well, we have dogs. So what? I'm like, so you want to return this where I have to sell this? And I actually just said it to her. You want to return this so I can sell this to somebody else. But you're returning it in a state that I can't sell it. So you expect me to clean, and I actually said it to her, so you expect me to clean this all up for you, is what you're saying at this point. So you want me to, and I made very clear to her that we were doing her a really big favor. It's like, so you're returning something that you're not supposed to be able to return. You're returning it without the receipt, and it's loaded with dog hair when it's not even broken. Now, having animals myself, this was not end of the world. I took a damp cloth, I cleaned it all up, I made sure that the characters didn't have anything on them that they shouldn't. Returned her money, and off she went. And she did. Now, I will say this though. I will say this. She did come back, which at this time at GameStop's history was a huge deal. She actually came back, asked for me by name, apologized for her behavior, and pre-ordered 7 other games from me.
Wow. Is that on commission?
That's unheard of.
Is that
That's unheard of. She's like, I gave you a really hard time. I am very, very sorry. And I couldn't believe it. Like, I'm sitting there like, that this woman is saying all this to me. But she did. She actually came back and pre-ordered 7 more games. Now, who knows? Maybe she got those games home. I was out of that GameStop after that point. Maybe she got those games, got them home, decided that they couldn't be beat, and brought them back to the store. I don't know. But it was a very nice ending to a very ridiculous kind of situation with them. So, so funny.
Good stuff. Well,
yeah,
that has excellently coasted us through the midstream mix-up, unless you want my worst story, but that might cut into the time for other questions, so I'll leave that to your discretion.
While we're, what, Shens, our podcasts that we've been doing together are been so conversational, and if we want to do more podcasts, we can definitely do more. So I want to hear the story. I want to hear the worst.
All right. This is again at the organic produce manager position. And a Thursday night where I'm the closing manager, and it's like 15 minutes before close. We had some outdated computers and brand new credit card machines, and every once in a while there'd be a little issue with the two communicating back and forth. So I'm on register 3 as a backup, and someone up at register 1, the credit card was declined on the machine, but the computer was still waiting for the credit card input. And if you know what that means you have to wait for the credit card machine to time out, and then you have to wait for the computer to time out, and then you have to wait for the credit card machine to sync back up with the computer, and then you have to start the transaction all over again, right? It takes a while, and there's nothing you can do while it's happening. So I get called up to the first register, and I go to see what's happening, and everything's frozen. Like, I can't even hit the Control-Alt-Delete, get to something else thing. So we just have to wait, because if I hard close it, we're going to lose all the data, and it's not going to be good. So basically just have to wait for this everything to catch up and get itself back. I swear I just saw my name flick up. Was it? I don't know what's going on. There might have been something else on my screen. I don't know if anyone else saw it, but I swear Shen's TV just popped up over your face, and it freaked me the fuck out.
I didn't see it, yeah.
I think it was something on my end, but anyway. I'm losing it!
In the middle of the story. Shens! Okay.
But I'm there doing what I can to try to make it go as quickly as possible. And the lady that's being helped is being patient, but the guy behind the lady is doing that thing where he's going, and he's starting to like get that bobbing up and down thing going. You can see in his head he's like he's playing out the confrontation in his head, like he's like psyching himself up for like how he's gonna get through this. And so he puts his stuff down on the conveyor belt, and it says, "Look, I can't wait for this. You need to take me to another register and rig me up so I can go."
Yeah.
And I was like, "Well, sir, I can't do anything until this transaction's complete, and the computer's timing out, so I have to wait for it to catch back up. So there's nothing I can do." He's like, "Well, that's not good enough. I need you to check me out now." And I was like, "Well, what would you like me to do with the customer I'm currently helping?" And the customer I was helping thankfully chimed in. He's like, "Oh, he doesn't care." And I was like, "Thank you, ma'am. Thank you." Thank you for chiming in. But he didn't care, and he's getting more antsy. He's like, "Well, is there any way you can make this go faster?" So I'd spin the monitor around to the frozen screen. I was like, "If you can do anything to get this to go faster, please help out because I can't do anything. And he just kind of shuts up for a little bit, and I go back to waiting for it to time out. And eventually everything comes back in, but we will have to do the transaction. And the person on register 1's not the fastest. So I take the customer being helped, the lady, and the guy, and I say, both of you can follow me to register 6, and we'll get this taken care of as quickly as possible. And I'm ringing up the lady as quickly as possible, and the guy is in line. He's like, wait, so you brought me over here to wait in a different line? And I was like, yes, sir, I have to help this customer before I can help you. She was first. And he's just not happy at all. So I'm ringing up the customer. Everything's ready to go. She's doing her credit card. And system's a little slow. And he just loses. He's like, look, I'm just going to leave with this stuff. And that's just how it's going to go. I was like, sir, I have more than enough information, both visually, time-stamped, and camera logs, to have you convicted of a felony and arrested. And he just stopped.
Yeah.
And he didn't know where to go from there. Like, cause
Yeah,
I just whipped out the card. I was like, boom. And so get her out of there as quickly as possible. Get him out of there. And he was like, well, this is just not the way to handle your problems and your customers. And I'm going to give a report. So who can I talk to? I was like, well, I'm the highest ranking manager in the store right now. So I am the person to talk to. He's like, well, then I'm going to call your home office. I was like, okay, go for it. And the moment he stepped out of the door, I ran upstairs, hopped on my email, hopped on the camera log, gave timestamps, gave IDs, gave a line-by-line recollection of the story. And by the time he called home office, there was already a whole work order of everything that had happened, and all he had to do was sign his name on it. It was like, you're not reporting me, bitch. I'm reporting you.
Oh, yeah.
And so by the time he even picked up the phone, the report was already there waiting for him. It wasn't going to be any new information. So
proactive strikes on the behalf of managers have saved a lot of headaches along the way.
Yeah.
That was that same district manager I was telling you about a little bit ago. I used to do that with her all the time. I would, if there was ever as a customer service issue in the store, as little time as I had to do it, I would still send her a quick email and say, this is what happened. Here's the basics. If you need more, please call me or let me know. I just want you to have the heads up. And then by the time she got the call, because she was so good, she was a master at telling the customer, you know what, you. And by the time she was done,
they'd be
she
smiling.
handled things, by the time she was done, they would thank her for the ride. It was like I could never figure out. She was a master with it. She really was. Like when a customer was just being so unreasonable, she'd have the situation handled. She was great with that. That was probably like her best. Her at her best was how she handled people in really, really bad situations. But she would still not give them what they wanted, but they would still thank her by the end of the conversation. It was just I watched her do it like 3 times right in front of me, and I'm like, and she'd get done, and I'd look at her like,
sorcery is
this? Teach me your ways. You have to teach me your ways. And she would completely diffuse the situation on top of it. You know, she was taking care of people, but the customer was just, it was like the situation I was telling you about. Completely unreasonable.
Yeah.
Yet she would somehow get it handled. Yeah. You know, and it was fantastic. It was fantastic.
All right. Well, we've got about half hour left of official time. So let's let you take the reins and finish this out for the last 30, 45 minutes.
Okay.
In whatever direction you see fit.
Yeah. Yeah. I have, you know what? I have a question that I really want to get into with you. And it's something that I know is very much in your wheelhouse. We talked about it during my podcast a little bit. And I want to make sure this question gets asked before we're done today. So I'm kind of jumping ahead of myself a touch.
I have one of those too. So I think that's the question I'm going to be asking afterwards.
So this is where I want to go with this though. Okay. You talk a lot about modern philosophers. Okay. And philosophy is admittedly something that, as much as I love like talking deep subjects, things like that, it is admittedly something that I myself have not discussed a lot. My question to you is, do you truly see yourself as a modern philosopher? And if you do, okay, are there other philosophers that you, not that you necessarily agree with everything they said, because philosophy is gets very, very deep into a lot of subjects. But are there ones that you like subscribe to, or have absorbed part of their like how they would approach different subjects?
Yeah. I initially, my gut reflex is to describe myself as a philosopher in training, but I don't think that's accurate. I think it's Neil deGrasse Tyson who has the opinion of the challenge is to know enough about a subject to have the audacity to think you know what you're talking about, right? Like there's plenty of people who think they know what they talk about because they don't know a lot about the subject, and that's kind of that double curve that happens, right? Like you don't know anything, and then you learn a little bit, you're like, oh yeah, I've got this all figured out, and then you get explore a little deeper, you're like, oh shit, I don't know anything. And then you get the long climb back up top, right? And that's kind of what he's talking about is, yeah, everyone knows about the first hump, but that second hump, getting to the point where you can have the audacity to actually think you know what you're talking about. And I think that's where I am with philosophy. I'm climbing that second hill. So I wouldn't say philosopher in training. I don't think there's a training for philosophers. I think philosophy is a viewpoint of the world. It's the ability to remove yourself and remove biases, and not everyone has that. Especially with how busy people are with their lives today. They just don't have the time to do it. But I've always thought that in today's society, at least in America, the only philosophers we have are stand-up comedians. They're the only people who can break down a logical idea or a logical argument and turn it on itself, which is really one of the fundamentals of philosophy. It's not the only thing about philosophy, but that's one of the fundamentals, is saying, like, here's this assumed 1,000-year-old way of looking at the world and thinking about things, but does that logic even work? Does it even make sense? Because if it does, well, then this is true, this is true, this is true, this is true. And everyone's like, oh, well, none of that's true. It's like, well, then something's wrong with your logic. Yeah. There's a problem, right? I'm not saying what you believe to be true is wrong, but the logic you're using to defend it, or the sequence of events you use to get there, are not the correct way, right? So, like, should humans have slaves? No, they shouldn't, right? But how do you explain that? How do you philosophize that? How do you rationalize it? What are the ethics behind it, right? Because, again, going back to comedians like Louis C.K., he joked, right? Maybe every greatest human achievement was because of slaves, right? So yes, slavery is bad, clearly. But how do you explain it? How do you where's the integration into your life? Because yes, slavery should not exist, but we're still exploiting third world countries. Sweatshops still exist. There's still black markets for people and organs and endangered species. Like, how are you integrating that idea into your being, into your existence? You know, we're all buying smartphones, but smartphones wouldn't exist without modern slavery. It's a fact. So where's your argument, right? And it just seems like comedians are the only ones these days, at least in America, that have that capacity, that have that outlook, that it's really just an outsider perspective. You have to not be a human for a bit. And you just have to kind of look at it like, what are these humans doing? Well, like, what are they doing?
do you think that maybe, Shens, just to kind of add to your point, do you think that maybe comedians can be that way because in a world that is very, and I'm not going to use the word even oversensitive here, because I see both the good and some of the negative that comes from how sensitive we are towards each other now. But sticking on topic, like in a world that is very sensitive, people have a tendency to drop those sensitivities when they go to see a comedian. And do you think that maybe plays into a bit of the fact that they're able to be modern philosophers because they can actually talk about things, and because they approach it with a humorous aspect, that they can actually get away with talking those, talking about those topics. Like as streamers, if you bring the word slavery into a conversation and everybody goes, because it's something that we all know is wrong. We all know that it shouldn't be there. And I agree with you. Like, we all know that slavery shouldn't exist, but yet there are a lot of places out there in the world that it still does. But it seems like comedians can talk about these things more openly than you could in like your average conversation. Do you think that it's because, again, people drop, like, they know they're going to see a comedian, they know it's supposed to be comedy, so they kind of drop their defenses a little bit?
I think that's actually a bit of a false security.
Mm-hmm.
Because the comedian's goal, the art of being a comedian, is working the crowd, right?
Yeah.
That's what they're really doing. They'll tell you they never give the same show twice, even if it's the exact same jokes, the exact same material, in the exact same order with the exact same pacing.
Mm-hmm.
There's still live feedback from the audience, and they're using that to just tweak and polish every little delivery they have to make it work, which is to say they're not operating under the function of philosopher. They're operating under the function of entertainer, which means there'll come a point where there's pushback, where there's a loss of interest, where there's a rejection of the entertainment. And philosophy can't have that. Philosophy has to overpower that. And that's why, philosophers of, eons past, names are still used today, because they had the ability to override your outrage, override your objection, and say, there's nothing you can argue against this because this is what the logic is.
Right.
And you can't do that in a comedy show. At some point, you have to let the audience win.
Yeah.
So, yes, you can dabble more openly in philosophy in a comedian setting, but at the ultimate core of philosophy, you can't do what you need to do, which is state the irrefutable.
Right. Yeah. Interesting. I appreciate the candid take on that too, because it's a lot of people seem to think, like, you get into that even gets back into content creation, where the creators can get away with certain things because it's them.
Right.
But anybody that has any kind of understanding of cancel culture, which is another really, really, really big thing right now, spend a little time on streamer Twitter and you'll find it all over the place.
Yep.
Knows that that's not true. I mean, is certainly those of us that are in the public eye, so to speak, whether you're in, whether the eye is small or large does not matter. You can suddenly find yourself called out on something that you didn't realize was going to be that big of a deal, but guess what? It really was. And
here's 2,000 people with a very angry letter.
yeah, exactly. Or you didn't think, you were just having conversation with your community, and then somebody was like, well, that they actually, did you see their stream where they said this? And it's like, and I watched this happen to these people, and these people that are so focused on bringing other people down. It's really always interesting to me, because I look at a lot of these people that focus in very heavily on this, and I always see one of two types. Either I see somebody who gets no attention whatsoever normally, and they felt that by tearing this person down, they could finally get some attention. It's temporary attention, and we know that because they'll get attention for a little bit, and then it's a flash in the pan.
Yeah.
Or somebody that's made a career out of doing it, and that's how they function. They actually function on tearing other people down, and they've managed to find an audience for it. They found an audience for that negativity.
That's a big thing I think YouTube has yet to fix. Their algorithms right now are actually favoring those dramatic back and forth spats between people. And if you look at the numbers, no one wins, right? Like, so right now I think it's H3H3 and I forget the other guy. They went back and forth with like 3 videos each, trying to tear each other down, pointing out how hypocritical and horrible the other one is.
Oh, really?
And they've both lost sponsorships. They've both lost subscribers. Like, no one's winning. It's all in the face of YouTube right now. But name me one major confrontation between two YouTubers from 5 years ago.
I can't remember one.
It doesn't exist. The closest I can get was like the boxing stuff, and that was just last year, right? Like, no one's gonna remember. No one cares. It's fun to watch the fire burn, and then the fire's out. So I think YouTube has a bit more of a problem with that than Twitch or streaming services right now. But then again, what happens when it bleeds into Twitch, right? Because then you're gonna have live interaction. Then you're gonna have two people that in some strange situation agree to talk in real time, even though they hate each other's guts, and are going to tear each other down in real time with the whole world watching, where they can't edit something out, where they can't take something back. And what's Twitch going to do? What are streamers going to do, right? So like that stuff I always have in the back of my mind is just fortifying myself. Like, even with you, I would never expect anything bad to come between us. But I always have a plan in the back of my head, like, what I need to make sure I'm prepared to defend what I'm doing, right? It's not like you always have to be on the defensive. You just have to always be able to defend what you're doing. And by that, I mean, just be true to who you are. If there's something you want to engage in, then make sure you're doing it for the right reason, in the right way, and you can defend it. And people may disagree with it, but as long as you had the right intention and you had the right execution, you can defend it, right? So
Family Craft added, that would be two friends who are pretending to hate one another for the meme.
Exactly.
Fake, the thing is that like there's ways to set up like fake battles between two people for the fun of it and let people know, like Ryan Reynolds and
oh my
God, why is the name eluding me for a second? Wolverine, yeah. Who played Wolverine though? I'm trying to remember his name.
I can't remember the name.
Anyway,
Chad will
like
figure it out.
The battle, the social media battle between the two of them was great fun and entertainment to watch. And that got them tons of attention.
And those I still remember from 5 years ago, when they made commercials for each other, and Ryan Reynolds did like the underhanded, backhanded compliment, and Wolverine did the genuine one, and then they're like both on camera at the same time after the fact, and Ryan Reynolds is like, I thought that was gonna be like a joke, like I didn't. You actually did a really good job, and I kind of.
Now I'm the jackass.
Right. So like, and that that's something I still remember from 5 years ago. So that's something done in the right way, because it was the right idea executed in the right way for the right reasons.
There was an expression I was told the one time, Shens, and when you were describing all everything with the philosophy and the comedians and all that, and you used the term "the fire burns," and there was a great expression I was told at one point: "The world burns, the idiots bring the marshmallows." I thought when that was said to me, I thought that was one of the greatest things that was ever said. Like, you talk about how everybody gathers to watch the fire, right? And it's really hard not to. It's really hard not to. Like, a lot of people don't realize when you're giving things extra attention, like somebody will post something. It's a very common Twitter tactic where somebody will post something so outrageous. So whether it's masochistic or racist or whatever, and they'll cause so much outrage that a whole bunch of people will jump in, they'll retweet it, they'll comment on it, and what does Twitter's algorithm do? Shoots it right to the top.
There's lots of interaction on this. We better give it more attention.
Yeah. And what I find really interesting, though, to your point, Shens, is if you watch that account, and I won't follow it because I don't want to give it even more fuel. But if I ever see something like that, which is rare now, I have my people chosen pretty well to keep a lot of that out of there. But what I find interesting is if you follow those accounts after, what they'll usually try to do, this is very common, they'll try to do another post just like it.
Right.
And it doesn't even get a quarter of the attention.
They're like, why isn't it working? And then they keep trying and trying and trying.
Why isn't it working? And then they'll try it again. And what happens is all the attention they got, I had somebody that I was admittedly friends with at one point, a fellow streamer. and he pulled something like that to get extra attention because he was frustrated. He was frustrated with everything that was going on. I know exactly how it happened. He was frustrated with everything going on in his career. He did that. And then he got this temporary boost and he lost 25% of his followers.
Yep.
And
you've lost your integrity.
Yeah. I stopped following him too. I'm like, dude, was it worth it? I hope it was worth it. I mean, you got a lot of attention on that one post. That one post had it had probably 5,000 like interactions on it between retweets and comments and all that, but there was so much hate in there.
Yeah.
And what ended up happening was, they lost about 25% of their followership. It's like, I hope that, because he doesn't really, the whole thing was, it was fake. He doesn't even really feel that way. It was about getting attention.
I think it's
That's why I have a mute button.
I think it's actually pretty fun also watching corporations dance with it.
Oh yeah.
Because like IHOP changing their name to IHOB, perfectly executed.
Yeah.
It was because they got everyone upset, but at themselves. And it wasn't even anything permanent, and it wasn't even actually a real change. They were just doing it to stir everyone up. And the only one that got hurt was themselves, and that's why it actually worked. It didn't backfire.
Yeah.
And then you have other times when like a company tries to jump on a bandwagon of like a tragedy or something. And I was like, yeah, okay, 14 people died less than 34 hours ago, and you're here promoting your brand. Sure, you're going to get a lot of attention, and it's not going to be good. So it's always fun watching like corporations, because corporations are like researching the hell out of all that stuff.
Oh yeah,
and they're field testing it, and they're doing everything they can with research and data and sociologists and everything else, and just seeing it work great sometimes, and other times it's just like, what were they even thinking? It's really fun.
I really appreciate companies like, and I got to give credit where credit is due here. You want to talk about creativity, but you look at a company like Wendy's and how Wendy's handles their tweets and everything now. Like they handle their tweets like it's a 16-year-old kid on a phone going, "Oh, this will get them." You know, I mean, and but it's brilliant. It works. It works, and that kind of stuff is fun. You know, it's like that. It's that light trolling that they do, but they understand how to do it and have fun with people. And you have to have some respect for that. It's like they know how to have fun with people without burning the world down while they do it. You know, some of the responses I've seen on from companies too on Twitter are just absolutely unreal. Like they're savage. They're like from game companies especially, they're absolutely savage. You know, it's just but it's in fun though. It's in fun. You know, it's when you're doing things to be really harsh intentionally, and it's really, you're really putting, bad messages out there. You know, it's like that's gonna work the other way. Congratulations on the temporary gain for the very long-term loss. Yeah. Because people, like you said, like you won't remember in 5 years, but you might have just set yourself back 6 months to a year.
Right.
In doing something like that. It's like, oh yeah, and he really was a friend. I'll never follow him again now. You know, we'll never be able to share that because he couldn't see more than a mile down the road. You know, it was really too bad.
I think that actually touches back on the comedians too that we were talking about before, because a lot of people complain like, oh, comedy is dying, or you can't joke about anything anymore, and I really don't agree with that at all. I think you need to update your act, right? Like the stuff that was funny in the 70s doesn't fly anymore, and it shouldn't. And I think the biggest division people aren't getting over right now, that used to be funny but isn't funny anymore, is it basically boils down to making fun of someone for something they can't help, right? Someone can't help the way they naturally look, but they can help how they do their makeup, right? So making fun of someone for being ugly is not acceptable, but making fun of someone who tries to promote like self-beauty and self consciousness.
Yeah.
And then you see the difference between their Instagram pages and their regular photos, and you're like,
Yeah.
okay, so you're a part of the problem, right? Those people you can make fun of because they can help being that hypocritical, but they can't help how they naturally look. And it goes the same thing. Like, you can't make fun of someone for being a Christian, but you can make fun of Christianity because someone can't help what their belief system is. If they've gone through life and that's what they've chosen to believe, it's a conviction. They can't help it. That's what they've put in as part of their identity. But you can make fun of Christianity because that's a decision. That's something that, you know, even Christians don't agree upon, right? Catholics, Episcopals, Reformationists, Lutherans, like what, like they can't even agree on it. So of course you can make fun of Christianity. So I think that's the biggest difference that people haven't really gotten on board yet. Because people always talk about, like, you know, how are you defending someone that Trump called a 2, but then you make fun of Trump being an orange Oompa Loompa. It's like, because he made himself an Oompa Loompa, right? He didn't. He wasn't born with orange skin. He chose to have orange skin, and that's the difference.
Yeah.
Right. So. Yeah. I think that's what it really boils down to, as far as the biggest division in what is and isn't acceptable in comedy these days. It's just, you know, and I think it's a step in the right direction. You know, you don't make fun of someone for being Japanese. They didn't choose to be born Japanese. They're Japanese. Get over it, right? Now, if you want to make fun of something in Japanese culture, go right ahead, but don't make fun of them for being Japanese, because they can't change that.
Yeah, it's what anytime I think where the line really gets drawn, Shens, is anytime you make fun of somebody for what and who they are. Yeah, that's out of bounds. That's those are the things that it's just it's not even whether or not it's socially acceptable. It's you just don't do it. Yep. You know, you don't because you're dealing with people. You're dealing with amazingly many of which who just want love and acceptance just like everybody else does. So when you take who and what they are and make that the subject of your comedy, no. Yep. No. But when somebody, like you said, when somebody actually makes the choice. And that's a perfect example. Like somebody that, and Trump is certainly not the only person on the face of the planet that ever overdid a spray tan. That's for sure. I've seen some. Wow. I don't even. You wouldn't know it to look at me now, but I mean, there was a time where, because living where I lived, we barely got to see the sun. I would actually go tan. It was when I was doing like my bodybuilding and all that other stuff, and I just, since I did all this work to my body anyway, why not? I might as well crisp my skin while I do it, you know? But they also had a spray tan booth, and I walked in. I was just signing in because I had a monthly membership. I signed in, and I was just sitting there waiting for a bed to open up. And this guy walks out. Now, Shens, I got to paint the picture here because irony being irony, being bald now, I have even more appreciation for this, but this guy was bald. All right. He came out. Now, here's the thing. He obviously worked out and took good care of himself and all that because he's all built. But he comes out of there and he's orange. And I mean orange. And because there wasn't even any hair, like they even did the top of his head.
Like an actual orange.
So it was like watching the annoying orange with legs walking through the lobby, you know? Like I wanted him to open his mouth and go, hey, Apple, hey, Apple, hey, you know? And it was, but again, that's in bounds because they chose that. They chose to do that, and it's not only that, but obviously it was a mistake. Obviously it wasn't, he didn't intentionally do that to himself. He chose the wrong tone or whatever the process was, but it was obviously an accident. And then what brings it, like something that brings something inbounds to me are mistakes that we make that are very much human nature. And especially when it's temporary, like that spray tan will be temporary. Eventually that's going to go away.
Right.
So it's okay to kid about that. Or when, like, there's been a couple times now that I have the microphone closer to my head, like I'll do this on stream and I'll go to bend over to laugh and I'll whack my head on the microphone or something like that, you know. That's in bounds. That's fun. That's also learning on how, you know, learning how to laugh, you know, learning how to laugh yourself, you know, learning to laugh at yourself. And that's really important as well. When you're willing to, you can bring more in bounds when you're willing to laugh at yourself and the things you do, as much as you laugh at what others do as well.
Yep.
You know, that actually helps, because then it starts to come, it's more about us all being human, which I think is a great thing. You know, and it does, it warms everything back up. It warms the comedy up, and that's really important.
That's one of the things I like actually doing with the character Ignorance, is because before anyone else knows, I know when Ignorance is going to screw up. So I'm usually laughing about it before the audience even sees it happen. So like, he talks a lot of Gabe, and he's, you know, completely full of himself. And I've actually like lurked other channels that tilt, and I've seen people comment like, I like watching you tilt because you don't have to tell the audience how good you are at this every 10 seconds. So I was like, I wonder who they're talking about. But, you know, and then there's that moment where, you know, I hit the wrong key. And the whole run just ends on like an embarrassing level and an embarrassing moment. And I'm already laughing about it. It's like, what are you going to say that's going to dig at me if I'm already laughing at myself before it even happened, right? Like, you just got to beat him to the punch. You have to be the first one laughing when it comes to things about yourself. Yeah, for sure. But I'm not going to let stream end. I know we're getting close to that 2-hour mark, but I'm not going to let it end without asking this question. And this is going to be a hard right. So
all right.
You might want to buckle in for this one.
Let's do it.
It's going to get personal and deep real fast. You have a son, correct? And it's not going to be about your son. Just confirming basic information.
Daughter. There's a separate story there, but
okay.
But yeah.
So you have a daughter. What is the most important lesson you have yet to teach your daughter?
That I have yet to teach her? Oh, wow. The biggest lesson that I have yet to teach her. I think something that that took me years to accomplish. Admittedly, it took me years to accomplish, and I hope that I can teach her to grasp onto it a lot more quickly than I did, is to stop complaining. I think that has been such a pivotal moment in my life. Like when I stopped complaining and stopped, because complaining a lot of times will spawn excuses for why you can't do things, for why you can't be successful. But as an extension of that, Shenz, I want her to understand that she can be whatever the she wants to be. That she doesn't have to follow anybody's predetermined path. That college may not be the right path for her, depending on what she wants to do. That really becoming self-reliant and building something out there on her own, because she is, I pay really close attention to her because she is truly mini-me. She gets an idea in her head and she's all in.
Right.
She's like, oh yeah, this is great. This is great. This is great. And she does a lot of what I used to do at her age, which was, it was great for 2 weeks and now we're moving on.
Yeah.
And that is something that I am hoping, and I understand that there's some lessons she's just got to have to learn on her own. But what I want her to understand is that it's her path to walk, and that I will always be there for her, and I will provide guidance wherever I can, but that she doesn't have to take somebody else's predetermined path. And a large part in success and happiness in that goes back to complaining. Don't complain. All right, something happened that you don't like. Somebody has something that you don't have. Don't bitch about it. Look at it. Look at what is causing you to feel that way. How are you going to absorb that? And how are you going to change what you're doing to improve your situation with that?
Yep.
One of the biggest lessons that I learned is that whenever I went somewhere, and I learned this before Twitch, thankfully, so I've been able to practice it on Twitch. When somebody made me jealous, it means that they had something, and usually it was something about their character or about their personality that I didn't have.
Yep.
So if I wanted that next level of success, I needed to actually not be jealous of them, but actually work to get a little bit closer with them and look at what they were doing and then see what lessons I could bring back to my life.
Right.
And make those adjustments. And that is such an amazing life lesson when you're able to accomplish that. And yeah, but what I want for her, because she has taken for a while, it's really funny. Like when I say mini me, she wanted to be an astronaut. She wanted to be an engineer. And I'm like, oh my God, these were all things that I wanted to do. The only phase she didn't go through was teacher. Teacher was the only phase she didn't go through.
Yeah.
But now she has come around to being an entertainer, being an art. She's insanely talented artist. If she really decides like that's the route she wants to go, she does some absolutely incredible work. She's constantly practicing, constantly working on her own development, things like that. Which I'm very proud of, but she's also getting now more into performing. She's doing more cosplay. Suddenly, like I'll be sitting there working on something, and all of a sudden I'll hear this foreign voice behind me. Like, who is that? And I turn around and it's her, because guess what she's doing? She's doing voices now.
Yep. Yeah.
And I'm like, oh man, here we
Truly, you
go.
are my daughter.
You are my child, aren't you? You are, I am your father, you know, I mean, but really that's, you know, and don't get me wrong. It's not like we're identical. We're not. She is definitely her own person. I very much recognize that, but I just don't want her to go through all the identity crises that I went through.
Right.
You know, that's really one of my biggest desires for her, is I want her to understand that, because my parents spent so much time telling me what I couldn't do.
Right.
And I'm like, and it is, you know, Shens, you know as well as I do that that is such bullshit.
It doesn't work.
It really is.
It doesn't work.
It really is. So I want her to understand that that's bullshit.
Yeah.
I want her to understand that that's really where that she can be what she wants to be, that she can go do that stuff. And that there's emerging markets that you don't, it's not like the movies anymore, where if you want to be an entertainer, you got to break into Hollywood or you got to break onto Broadway. No, you can go out and you can build it on your own.
Just make your own movie.
Yeah, you can. You can be.
make your own 4.5 minute long commercial and air it on your own TV station.
You really can though. You can do whatever you want to, and that's what I'm hoping to do is to you know, teach her some of those technologies. But again, getting back to your question, I want her to complain less, and I want her to understand that she can really go out and make whatever it is creatively that she wants to make, and that, you know, and that we've got her back during all that. So
that's a fantastic answer and a great way, I think, to wrap up this wonderful episode 3 of Losing Our Marbles. Thank you.
Yeah.
Standard Damage.
Thank you so much for having me, Shens. I really appreciate it.
It's been delightful. And this will end the YouTube video for Losing Our Marbles. We will continue with some back and forth Q&A with chat. So if you want to get in on that anytime in the future, make sure you join us live every Saturday. And the details will be posted in the Discord before every episode. Anything you'd like to promote or say before you go, kind sir?
The only thing I'd love to promote right now is coming up tonight on my channel, starting at 5 p.m. Eastern. We are doing our very first sponsored stream. However, what is making this extra special is that we are going to be doing that to, if we hit certain stretch goals, and it's a free stretch goal, basically. They're just asking people to try the game out for free. But if we hit a couple of stretch goals, we're going to be doing donations to, big donations to Humane, either $100 or $250 to the Humane Society COVID-19 Relief Fund. So if you're around tonight, please join us for that.
Great stuff. Great stuff. And don't forget, Standard Damage also has their own channel and their own podcast, which you can catch pretty much anytime. 4 days a week?
4 to 5. Yep,
4 to
4
5
4 to
days.
5 days a week.
He's catching up to my 7 right now. Whew.
Twitch TV dot standard damage, twitch.tv/standard damage. Or you can also, my Twitter is also very active as well, which is the same name there, Standard Damage. So,
and all that information can be found below in the description. So thank you all for watching, and we hope to see you next time.